Hi. Hi, my name's Mark, and welcome to the For a Lifetime podcast. What it means to be a Christian can look very different from person to person. Here at the For a Lifetime podcast, we discuss what it means to live passionately with Jesus for a lifetime. Jesus calls us to lifelong discipleship, and life with Jesus is like no other. We are shaped by what we see and hear from others, and I hope the unique experiences and perspective that God has richly blessed me with will inspire and enrich your life as we strive together to passionately follow Jesus for a lifetime. Today, I want to talk about something that has really enriched my life. I feel a little self-centered talking about this. This kind of feels like I'm saying, look at me, I'm so great. But really, I want to share about this because it's really about me saying, look at what God has done. I hope this will encourage you to pursue the things that God puts on your heart. So here we go. I became a Christian in the late 90s. For the first few years I was a Christian, I didn't know about Christian radio, but I really enjoyed the music at my church. My truck didn't have a radio, so when I would drive around, I would sing the songs that I heard at church as loud as I could, all by myself. There were times I would even make up songs as I drove around. I loved singing worship songs, but I am not gifted musically. This was pointed out to me when the choir director of our church pulled me aside one day during choir practice. There was a high school choir group at my church that was preparing to go on tour in San Diego. The director asked me to come see him after school one day to talk. That week, I went to his office, and he asked me if I had ever been in choir before. I said no. You see, my parents loved music, but they couldn't sing at all. My dad would always sing a few beats behind, and my mom, let's say, what she lacked in skill, she compensated with volume. The director then played a note on the piano and asked me to hum the note. He worked with me to try to help me sing in key. He graciously asked me to sing quieter. I realized that if I stood next to someone who sung well and in my range, I could match them. So I started doing that. It was a lot of fun being in the choir. Most of the guys in my discipleship group then could play the guitar and sing. I wanted to learn, but I didn't know where to start. It wasn't until years later when Catherine and I first were in Turkey that I decided I needed to learn to play the guitar. We went to a city where there was a new church plant. During the Sunday service worship, we sung along to a CD that was played from this little CD player. It was horrible. I then borrowed a guitar from the church and started learning. My wife then surprised me on Christmas with a guitar. She kept telling me that the prices at the market had gone up and she needed more cash. So that's how she saved up without me knowing about it. I worked really hard to learn to fret the strings. I learned chords. Catherine encouraged me all along. She would praise even the slightest improvements. If it wasn't for her, I would have given up because it wasn't good at the beginning. I played for a few friends, and they said that my rhythm was off. We then moved to the city that had the church plant, and I went to one guitar lesson at a nearby music shop. The instructor watched me play and said I was doing it all wrong. He then started showing off what he could do and asking me if I could do that. I left so discouraged, I didn't know what to do. So like I said, I'm not gifted musically. So often, I would ask my musically gifted friends, how do you play that? How do you do that? They would quickly play the part and say, like this, and then start playing more licks. It was just all too fast for me. On a side note, something like this happened the other day when I was showing my daughter-in-law how to play triads and movable chords. I showed her once, and she picked it right up. I was so impressed. I'm definitely not like that. So after the guitar lesson at the music store, I went back to church. It just so happened that there was an Iranian refugee visiting the other Iranian refugees who were living at the church. I told my friends about my experience, and then the Iranian brother who was visiting motioned to give him the guitar. He didn't speak English or Turkish, and I don't speak Persian, but he played a strum pattern for me. He then wrote the pattern down on a sheet of paper, down, down, up, down, up. I tried it. I struggled, but I started practicing it. Then he showed me another strum pattern for 3/4 time. He played it, muting the strings. He didn't know how to fret the strings, but he had learned these two strumming patterns. I took those two strumming patterns and used them to lead worship in Turkish for 7 years. Everything I played was one of those two patterns. From that little lesson, I realized that I was trying to play the melody while fretting chords, and that's just not how you play the guitar. Leading worship with a single guitar, you need to play the rhythm with the chords. It was such a joy to be able to lead worship. The funny thing is that at that time, I could only play Turkish worship songs. Some of the songs were originally in English, but when I tried to sing in English, I couldn't do it. I could only play and sing in Turkish. I couldn't even play secular songs either. I would try and try, but I couldn't get the rhythm right. I was great at fretting, but my strumming hand was stuck in those two different strumming patterns. Then I met another group of Iranians. My family and I had been the only Christians in our province for 7 years. This family had been placed in the capital of the province by the government as their refugee application was being processed. When we first met, I took my guitar and we tried to sing songs that we both knew. This Iranian family showed me a website that they had worship songs on with sheet music, and the words were in Latin script, so I could learn from them. I listened to all 150 songs, trying to recognize songs that I knew in Turkish or English. Each week when I went to meet them, we would sing new songs together. Eventually, they asked me to play songs that I think were originally written in Persian. The rhythm was different. Most of the time, the songs were in minor keys or keys that I wasn't familiar with. I would listen to the song over and over again. I would try to follow the sheet music, and I started breaking out of those two strum patterns that I had relied on for so long. Once I learned one of the songs they requested from me, they never stopped asking me to learn new songs. For the 5 years we were together, they constantly were asking me to play different songs. They would show me a song, have me listen to it. I would say, I can't play that. But then I would go home and work on it. And most of the time, I would be able to play it for them. It was so much fun. It was all crazy though. Here I was having no musical talent or training or skill, but I was playing and singing Persian worship twice a week. I would play for Sunday and the midweek prayer meeting. I had to practice at least an hour a day to be able to play the songs and really worship myself. I spent way more time practicing the guitar than I did preparing my sermon. Then my wife bought me an electric guitar for my birthday. I didn't know how to play electric, but I had always been curious. The second the Iranians found out that I had an electric guitar, they said, "You have to use that for worship." I said, "I don't know how to play it for worship." But then again, I went home, practiced, fiddled around with it with my small amp that I had, and I eventually got a pedal board. And then I mainly led worship on Sundays with an electric guitar. There would be times that I would be working on a song, trying to play it, struggling, not understanding how to play. But then it would all come together. I would get so excited and praise God for it. I would pray, begging God to help me when I learned a new song. Leading worship was always hard. It took a lot of practice, but it was so fulfilling. It was clear to me that it was all from God. The desire I had was from God. The persistence was from God. All skill that I developed was to God's credit. And here I was, getting to lead Iranian refugees in worship as I worshiped God, singing songs in Persian I didn't understand the words to. I then had a herniated disc in my neck, and I couldn't play the guitar. The fingers on my left hand were numb and not strong enough to fret the strings. I eventually had the disc replaced with a prosthetic. While I was recovering, I started to try to learn how to play the piano to worship. I say play piano to worship because I really didn't learn how to play the piano. I just worked on playing octaves with my left hand and simple chords with my right. I can't play the melody, I just play the rhythm. Playing piano helped me to strengthen my left arm that had atrophied from the pinched nerve. I was homebound for a few months and I learned to play the piano. It was a real treat at that time. I could only play a song or two before I would get so tired I'd need to take a break. But it was fun singing and playing the songs as I recovered from surgery. Eventually, I started playing the guitar again. and I resumed leading worship. At the same time, we had decided to move back to Arizona for the sake of our kids' development and transition to adulthood. So I knew that I only had a few more months of leading worship. I was the best option at our church, even though I was singing in a language that I didn't know, and I'm not musically talented. But I knew I wasn't good enough to lead worship back in America. I took advantage of my last few Sundays there. The people at church had made it clear time and time again that they would love if someone would play the piano for worship. So I worked on it a lot. And the last 2 Sundays I was there living in Turkey, I led with the piano. It was a hassle to take the piano in the van, but it was such a joy. Before one of the services, while we were rehearsing, I started crying. I was overwhelmed with joy and sadness. I was grateful for the ability God had blessed me with in playing the piano. I was honored to be able to lead these dear brothers and sisters in worship. I was also sad that this season of life was coming to an end. The lady who was accompanying me didn't know that we were moving back to Arizona, so I didn't cry for long. It was such an intense time. God's hand in my life then was so rich. I'm sharing my musical journey with you now because I want everyone to experience God's hand in your life as well. Stepping out in faith to do something that is hard or out of your current abilities gives an opportunity to have God show up. There's a risk of failure, but there's also an opportunity to change, to grow, to see God empower you with where only He can get the credit. When life is hard, we cling to God because we have to. For many of us, life really isn't that hard. We have to step out in faith in order to live in dependency on God. We have so many other things that we can depend on: our own abilities, our family, our friends, our wealth. I'm not saying that you should go out and do something new just because you can't do it. What I'm trying to encourage you in is to do that thing that's always been in your heart that seems impossible. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." If we are already delighting ourselves in the Lord, then He is putting desires on your heart. So often we sell God short and think that we just got excited and we dismiss the passion. There are so many examples of small, insignificant people who do amazing things because they trusted God and stepped out in faith. There's this one woman at our church who is heartbroken over babies dying in Juarez, Mexico from malnutrition and lack of clean diapers. She started collecting diapers and formula and taking it to the ministry that was based there. And the infant mortality rate there has gone down drastically. She continues in this ministry today. There's another sweet woman at our church who gets to teach anger management classes at a nearby women's center. She will say that she hasn't experienced what the women at the center have experienced, but she went there to serve, and teaching this class was asked of her, and she stepped out in faith. She continues to do that with what's asked of her. She is amazing, and God is doing so much through her. God's power to use each and every one of us is amazing. What does He have for you? Where do you need to step out in faith to allow God to mold you and shape you into a vessel that will glorify Him and bless others? This has been the For a Lifetime podcast.